If you're standing here with me, you must be wondering, what is the optimum process in replicating Celtic warriors in 1/72nd scale? And we will cover that today, but I will not go into any great detail about Celtic history or anything. You should go read a book. There are historians out there who have dedicated their life's work to studying how long Celtic toes were or whatever. I'm not that guy. Basically, because I'm afraid. I'm afraid that if I try and then I fail, I won't match up to my own expectations of what I think I could do, and I would have to live with that existential realization with every waking moment. So.
The ancient Celts, a proud and barbarous people, ever clashing on the frontiers of the Roman Empire, howling and roaring, beating swords on shields, painted in otherworldly symbols like fabled spirits brought to life. But how do we go about making an army of them? So, very quickly, let's discuss who they are, then how we lay out the armies and how we go about making the units. But a basic summary on the Celts are, according to Wikipedia, that they were a collection of Indo-European people, identified by the use of the Celtic languages and how they rode spaceships into battle. The Celts spread across Europe with many subsets of groups like the French Gauls, the Ancient Britons, and the Celtiberians. The Celts I'm making are Ancient Britons because I like chariots, but in terms of appearance, there's not a lot to differentiate them, so you can really adopt many of my ideas for your own ancient spacefarers. That's probably a 40k faction by now. I know how you work, Games Workshop. I know. When I create an army, I map out a few themes I want to tie all the units together with. This is because I want my units to be varied, yet still feel unified as part of a greater whole. With my Celts, my main ideas are bare flesh, multicolored plaids, woad, and disorganization. I took my own advice, I read a few books, and that's historically accurate. Believe me, I'm a historian. If I say a thing, that makes it true. I saw it on a sign. Now, one of your first considerations is basing. Many game systems use different methods of basing. My preferred system of Basic Impetus says that infantry at 15mm scale use bases that are 8cm by 4cm. As I'm using 1/72nd scale, I can use 15mm or 28mm bases, but I choose 15mm because I don't have to paint a ridiculous amount of minis per unit. So I like using plastic card of a 1.5mm thickness. I measure out the dimensions and then I cut. Yeah, in historicals you have to make your own bases. That's life. I've been told that Basic Impetus' system is deliberately compatible with DBA, but I've never played DBA. Now, at this point, you're probably either thinking one of three things. Number one, it is important to have versatility in base size if possible, to have maximum flexibility for wargames, but ultimately, you should base according to your own goals. Number two, what is this basing stuff? I only use Games Workshop approved bases. And number three, I like Celts, and what is this? Alright, so let me settle this. My response to the first is, you've read my mind, you son of a bitch. Ultimately, it is our hobby that is incredibly niche, but we don't have to follow any corporate guidelines. Let's just be part of the joy of historicals. They're not trademarked, we can switch pieces around for many game systems. So cool. To the Games Workshop fanboys. Alright, I get it. I like Space Marines too. New 40k.
Primaris
Space
Marines.
The trailer has Primaris 40k. Primaris Space Marines are the true inheritors of Goldman's legacy. Chainsaw me with my ironclad forearms by the love of
Primaris Space Marines.
Listen here, you little lump. If you want to worship a company who doesn't care about you more than milking you for every last penny like some chaos god of corporate finance, that's great. I love Games Workshop stuff too. But you're allowed to like more than one thing. And the models are excellent, but the games are so bad. And for people who just like Celts, they're... Yeah, I get it. I like Celts too. They're like barbaric rednecks. So, rednecks. Did you know you can paint little models of them and play games and stuff? But if you don't want to, that's cool. You can make dioramas or just do nothing. It's up to you. Anyway, in my Basic Impetus army, I have 4 warrior warbands. The Bernarchi, the Battle Gap, the Metal Weir, the Reapers, the Colgogriff, the Sharp Talons / Warriors, and the Draki Cintado, the Dragons who are first. Each unit attempts to adhere to the army's theme, yet also present a distinct sub-theme by themselves. So for example, the Bernarchi are the youngest warriors, and so noticeably have the less plaid, more bare flesh, whereas for example, the Colgogriff all have plaid capes to mark their status as elite warriors. I created most of my units in a stage-by-stage painting process, but you can obviously apply the same principle to individual models. First, I base coated the flesh with tanned flesh, then I layered with dwarf flesh and highlighted with elf flesh. None of these paints are produced anymore. That's how long I've been painting for. Too long. As the paints I use are no longer in production, feel free to substitute my recipes with your own, but the principle is basically dark base coat, lighter layer, then highlight with the lightest flesh color. You can use a wash at any stage to darken or tint, but that's up to you. Most of my component parts on my miniatures, like hair, clothing, metals, use the same theory of a darker base coat, then a wash if applicable, the original color, a hard line highlight to finalize. I prefer the stylized approach to mini painting that Games Workshop advocates because it really pops on the battlefield. You can obviously make it more complicated by blending more stages in, like with non-metallic metals, but doing this for every warrior is extremely time intensive, and ain't nobody got time for that. Now, you do that, and you've got an army. The whole process of a unit can take anywhere from maybe a month for up to 2 months, because I hate doing eyes. Do you know how hard it is to do the eyes? I can't even see where the paint goes when I dot the irises in. I just dot and pray. That's how hard it is. I like to vary the clothing on my units. For my most basic warrior units, it's just simple block colors, but the most elaborate plaids I reserve for my elite warrior regiments. Now, a simple way to do plaid is just to draw crosses and shade the intersection of the bars. Simple plaid. But if you want to do crazy plaid patterns, just get a picture and copy the picture. And simplify if it's too ridiculous to fit that many lines and squares in such a small canvas. I just googled tartan and plaid patterns and tried to replicate. It takes literally days for me, because I drag out the process, I fix mistakes, I squint, I try to fill in tiny details, but it's possible. I'm not the greatest painter, and I managed it, and by that logic, you are the greatest painter, and you will have no problems after your 6th painting championship. Other than the flesh tones, I think the most important thing to learn to paint for a Celtic army is the plaids, because what marks them out is their distinct tartans and plaids that they have on their pants, their capes, their cloaks, and so forth. As I'm painting Ancient Britons, I like to adorn my warriors with woad, but I suppose many different Celtic peoples would have used warpaint. Deriving inspiration from popular culture, I have a mix of symbols and smeared colours to play up the aspect of barbarism that is so embedded in the common perception of the Celtic identity. I really like Celtic swirls, which is just a matter of taking your time in painting increasingly smaller concentric circles. I think the bare flesh and the woad patterning really creates a sense of barbaric warriors, but I wanted to separate them from, say, Vikings, which are traditionally very dark. Having bright plaids is not only historically accurate, but gives the Celts their own distinct visual identity, which would separate them on the battlefield. But all the bare flesh still creates this...
Can I take off the hat now?
Nope. I also think it's important to consider the basing.
Wait,
have I talked about long walks along the undergrowth to observe the way that dirt and plants mingle together to make more realistic bases and to recreate scenes from Lord of the Rings. I think it's more realistic to mix up a variety of basing materials like static grass and sand painted as dirt, flowers and shrubs together in random patterns to make the formation seem organic. When taking photos, make sure you either don't get strangers in the shot or you're in a concealed position. Once your figures are painted, simply glue them in any kind of order you wish. I personally think it's more fitting to have disciplined formations like Viking shield walls, hoplite phalanxes and Roman testudos in close rank, and for barbarian skirmishes to be more spaced out, but it's really aesthetic at this point. I like to roughly plan the position of the figures, trace around them to mark their positions, and then base sand around the tracings. This allows me to undercoat the base with spray paint for convenience, then glue in all my figures and finish the whole base later. Now, the reason I'm making this is when I was first introduced to historicals in 2011 by my high school wargames club, there were no guides as to how to create particular armies, not on YouTube or anything. When I picked it up again in 2019, I didn't see anything either, and that could not stand. You want something done right, you do it yourself. I want to be that guiding light that never existed for myself when I had a bunch of small plastic dudes asking, but what I do. I like Games Workshop, and here to tell you what to do. Spend thousands of dollars. Commit totally. Do it!
Space Marines.
But the beauty of historicals is they're cheap. They're made by a variety of companies, and there's no constant pressure to keep changing army lists because history has already been made. You can't go back in time and tell the Romans to f off. But you can go out there and raise a tribe mighty enough to make the Isles tremble. A ragtag horde of howling barbarians charging for their freedom. Together, we will decide the fate of fictional Britain. Now go forth and make Rome tremble.
Make sure you press like and hit the subscribe button for my channel.